Of appreciation, I will request John, Krishnuma ma'am, Ankita and Satisha, please come up.
Happy morning, parents. It's my privilege to welcome John Andrew Williams to GIS Ahmedabad. We are really privileged to have him here today. It's his first visit to India, Ahmedabad, and to GIS. So it's a really proud moment for all of us. Krishnuma, I've maybe heard but met her yesterday. It was a pleasure meeting her, carrying vast experience of bringing change in lives of many people, children and adults and old alike. So great to have you, madam, here. And of course, Satish and Ankita requires no introduction. I have seen Satish, Ankita very small. When I came to Gujarat, I met her and I've been a family friend for Ankita. And it's a great, great initiative they have taken. And it's my blessing with you. I'm sure you will flourish. And actually what you have done is a divine work. The Flow Global. The initiative which I feel that has been till date been lacking. Probably this is going to open windows to many children who probably require an intervention at a critical moment in their life. So having said this, first of all, thank you all of you for joining us. Well, Sunday morning, as the anchor very well said, is a day left for all of us, and we want to relax, and you have sacrificed that Sunday morning for a cause. And I'm sure, as she said, 50% you will take away. I'm sure you will take 100% takeaways. Many a times, what difference it would have made to us if we were not to come here. well, you would have just rested a little more. But what difference will it make to you when you will have a spark that will change the entire path of your life? The wisdom comes at a time when we are not thought of. And wisdom is the supreme. It is not knowledge. It is not information. It is that spark which very few have, that takes you to an inward journey, less traveled by most people. Maybe you are going to be those lucky ones who will begin to travel and have that inward journey which will take you to the supreme requirement of life, and that is none other than happiness. Well, whatever we do in our life has a purpose, has a cause. We don't do just things like that. But there are very few people who choose consciously for a cause of happiness. Why? Because this entire world, from the time we are born, we are into a kind of rituals, either pulled or pushed by people or by life's routine itself. A very few people, look on the signs. Otherwise people, like in the olden days, when there were no pumping machines, there were those bulls who would go round and round and round, and then you will have the water through the pulley coming up. Have you seen that? Any of you in the villages? Maybe it's still there. I think it's vanishing. Those bulls were tied, their eyes were closed, so that they don't get distracted, and they simply go on moving, correct? Are you aware about these things? This is gone story, and this is the 21st century. We don't have any more. I'm sure for John it will be something new to hear about. Why were they tied? Why their eyes were closed? The purpose is simple: no distractions. You keep doing this, endless, and the farm has the water. I think many of the times we are like that. Our eyes are closed, our senses are closed, and we are moving with the current of life, and we take a very little time to choose consciously the happiness. To me, when I heard about the entire concept of life coaching, I realized this is something which is going to open the window for something different which will take you to happiness. This intervention is required, according to Flow Global, for youth, for children who are moving from childhood to maybe the adult phase of life. And that phase of life is highly sensitive. That phase of life is very, very critical. Sometimes an intervention can help it accelerate, or the child may go into the phase of frustration, stress, or maybe trauma. And many a times, yesterday she was narrating how many suicides happen every day. There is one suicide happening. That's the rate she was talking about. Why is it so? Nobody chooses to give up life. Life is the blessing itself. Now why do people choose to end life then? It's maybe that somebody has not cared for them. Somebody has not spoken to them. So if that caring and that intervention can save life, just imagine, that's the extreme thing, just imagine children who pursue their life and move on. What if they are given this intervention probably they would have reached 50%. Now with this intervention, they can reach their 100% potential. And that is what I can see the sole purpose of academic life coaching. It is not necessary, although most of us go to doctor only when we are sick. Yes or no? The doctor is sitting there. We have a parent who is a doctor. Doctor sir, you tell me, when do parents come to you? People come to you.
When they are sick and they need their treatment.
When they need treatment. Unfortunately, that is the sad part of it. But we always learn in school prevention better than cure, but we never implement. I think the time has come to look at a change. Yesterday I was happy to hear from John Williams that he is a coach for hundreds of people and schools and maybe institutions, and he's given training for so many, he's an author. But when one of the child, in fact GIS student, asked him, do you have a mentor or a coach? He said yes, he has a coach and he keeps talking to him from once in a while. Oh, that's a great thing. We least scared about having a coach or a mentor or a teacher. We least scared about. We think that we are all almighty, we are all perfect. Many a times, I mean that's the unconscious, subconscious, because there is no one who has told us that everyone requires someone to be a mirror reflection for them, to give them a feedback, so that we can see ourselves, in a better position. I have in my earlier trainings learned something called Johari window. I do not know anybody knows here something called Johari window. Yeah, there are people. When I did this exercise, I realized, my God, I never realized that there is a blind window which I need to explore. I never realized that I know about myself, but there are people who know about myself which I do not know. So I guess I do not know much. I guess the academic life coaching probably can look at these three windows which normally are left and not touched. Just imagine if these three windows are taken care, what would our life be? If we have to rate the success of our life from 1 to 10, where would you rate? First of all, we do not know, so we are not able to rate itself. Correct? Maybe academic life coaching. So I am so glad that you people have taken this mission. My best wishes are with you. This school is an open invitation. We have 1,500 parents, students, and we have double the number of parents. And the time to come, probably we can extend. We have 48 pre-primary schools who are type schools with GIS Ahmedabad. So that is my promise to you. And I'm sure Ahmedabad, Gujarat and India, time to come, will benefit leaps and bounds from you. God bless you and have a wonderful journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming out on Sunday. I won't make it worth it, don't worry. It's going to be good. Last night was fun. And I've been in India now for a week, so I think I'm totally over jet lag and feeling more and more like myself. So this is all good stuff. Oh, good. It's up. So a little bit about me. So I started my career as a high school Latin teacher. And Latin is probably the most useless, practically speaking, subject you could ever study. But I really enjoyed my time as a Latin teacher. Yes, other people. Fantastic. It was one of those things where when I was in college, I studied Latin, Sanskrit. I studied Sanskrit for a year. Korean, German, and ancient Greek. So I was a linguist by trade. I found life coaching, and when I was first introduced to life coaching, I thought it was kind of a silly name, right? When someone said, "Oh, there's a life coach coming," what was your first thought? Like, what is that? Is he an expert in life? Who is what does this mean? You know. So all of a sudden you get this idea that life coaching. So what is life coaching? We'll get into that. But I got into it because I was a practice client. I was the practice client of someone going through the program, and then that changed my life. And I realized what life coaching is about. It's about understanding the internal world. And what school does, the promise, most of the promise of school is if you do well with grades, if you get good grades, then the internal world must be fine. What life coaching says is the internal world comes first. If the internal world is organized, if there's a system, if there's knowledge there, then the external world falls into place. And so today we're going to go through a couple life coaching exercises and show you and give you the experience of what it's truly like to be coached. And then we'll give you some tools that you can use with your little ones as well that I wish I had learned when I was a student. And feel fortunate enough to learn when I was in my mid-20s. All right, let's do the next slide. So what is life coaching? Life coaching is the profession it's the process of getting really clear on what it is you really truly want, and then designing your life to achieve it. So it's looking at what are you really truly after? Not what you think you're after, what you should be after, but what is it that you're truly trying to achieve? And then designing a life around habits. And the habits are extremely important. We have both habits of action, but there's also mental habits. There's also emotional habits. And we don't often look at those and think about those as habits. And in personality, my sense on personality is a bundle of habits. It's a bundle of beliefs. And just like anything else, it's hard to change a habit, but it's possible. And so if a student comes and says, I'm not good at math, or I'm not good at language, or I'm not good at this, and there's that habit that gets set, that can change. It's not a set thing. So let's get into it. Next slide. So life coaching is started with sports psychology. Yeah, next slide. I want to burn through these pretty quick because I have another presentation that I want to give you. There are 2 slide decks that we're working with here. So this is Timothy Galloway in the 1977 wrote a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, and this is what put tennis on the map of being a mental sport. But also what the Galloway's idea is that the inner world of tennis, the inner world of competition, coming up with routines, post-routines, during routines, all the mental things. This is just as important as the actual playing of tennis, right? The actual physical part of it. It's what gave tennis that reputation of being a mental sport, right? Somehow tennis got this, tennis is more mental than other sports. This is why, this book here. Next slide. So, sports psychologist Rodriguez, she talks about that it is not a one-size-fits-all. And this is the important point. A lot of education, the idea of education is you take individuals and you make them learn the same things. Right? What life coaching says is, no, you are individual. Let's help you understand yourself. Let's help you as an individual become more powerful as you, yourself. It's that pre-competition routine. Yeah, keep going. Next slide. Yeah, let's keep it going. I love it. So then the next thing is based in positive psychology. Next slide. Positive psychology is a study of human flourishing. The idea of flourishing is it's a lot like the weather. You can't measure the weather, but you can measure aspects of the weather. You can measure precipitation, humidity, temperature. All of those things you can actually measure, and all those comprise, it's a nice day outside, which it is a nice day outside. So thanks for being here on a beautiful Sunday. Here we are. Next slide. Positive psychology includes many measures, one of which is PERMA, which the idea is positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning and accomplishment. These are things that you can study, and together they give you an idea of how well you're doing. This idea of well-being. Next slide. Positive psychology also has a number of theories. Growth mindset. I want to talk a little bit about growth mindset. I didn't talk about it last night, but I want to emphasize it a little bit. So, growth mindset comes from a psychologist, Carol Dweck, out of Berkeley, California, which is close to where I live. And the idea is that there are two main points. As parents, and we have our young ones, we want them to do well in school. Right? We want them to prove that they're smart in school. And a fixed mindset says that talent is innate. That you are going to be good at math, or you're going to be good at science, or whatever it is, and that talent, you can't change too much talent. Yes, you can put in effort, but the fundamental idea is that you're either good at it or not good at it. Right? There's not much you can do with that. That's a fixed mindset. What a fixed mindset does is it puts a lot of pressure on performing right now. You have to perform right now in order to feel like you're smart or intelligent. And if you don't perform right now, then it's bad. And so 90% of students have a fixed mindset, if not more. Almost everyone does. And it's a challenge. It provides stress, pressure, and this is where students feel like if they're not smart, then a lot of negative things happen to them. A growth mindset on the other side looks at this idea that talent doesn't matter as much as effort. That effort is more important than talent, and that failure is to be embraced. And now, from the school system, the way the schools are set up everywhere in the world, failure is not a good thing. Failure is a negative thing. And if you fail, that means that you're not smart, you're not intelligent, you should avoid it at all costs. Growth mindset embraces it, and embraces learning. And so there's this idea of punished by praise. That even if you get good grades, right, even if you're really super smart and you get all A's or all 100%, that all of a sudden, like, yes, that means that's good stuff. But that can also lead to a fixed mindset as well and put lots of pressure on students. A growth mindset, it's not so much the grade that you're getting, but the habit of effort that you keep putting in. And it's the effort, as the habit of effort, that's the important point. And we're going to get to a couple study things later that can give you an idea of, if you're putting in effort, here's a structure that will help students learn best. Let's go with mindset. Broaden and build. This is another theory. It's a theory of positive emotion. So broaden and build. The idea is that so we know a negative emotion. We tend to, psychology has studied a lot of negative emotion, and this idea that we are human beings are risk adverse, right? If you do something and it doesn't work out, we feel the pain about 3 times more acutely than we do the positive. So let's say you get something happens and you lose, we'll say 10 units of energy. You will feel that about 30, as if you've lost 30. So you will need to gain 30 in order to have your emotion be about equal. So broaden and build theory says that the reason of positive emotion, why do we have positive emotion? Is because it broadens, it's play, it's having fun, it broadens our awareness of creativity, and then it builds our talent set. So you think about it, when have you learned best? Anything in your life, when have you learned best? It's when you're having fun. It's when it makes sense, when all of a sudden you're like, this is fun. And people like what they understand. People like what they understand. So if you don't like it, if you don't understand it, you aren't going to like it. If you don't like it, then you're even more not going to understand it. Human beings want to understand. I don't know any student who goes to school and says, no, I don't want to learn this. I don't want to do that. That's learned helplessness. And it comes from this idea that somehow my performance is tied to my talent, which is a judgment on my worth as a human being. That's the fundamental challenge that young people face in schools. And they're faced with it every single day through grades. And when every grade you get becomes a judgment on your worth as a human being, school can become an extremely challenging place. So as parents, and everyone's been through this, I've been through this, you have all been conditioned this way, like everyone in this room has had to deal with this. And so the idea is you have to unhook. You have to unhook from your worth is how well you're doing in school. Your worth is beyond that. But there is a structure, there is effort. And if you put in effort, then this is where you could become successful. Strength-based learning, this is really big in the US right now. Strengths finders, it seems like everyone is taking the VIA, and then putting their 5 strengths in their email. Right there, you'll see it in their email signatures. The 5 strengths. Hope theory and resiliency, which is one of my favorite theories of positive psychology. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. So there's one study, it's the impact of life coaching. This is an early one, it's done in 2003, so it's almost 15 years old now, but you know, that's a big, I guess a little over 15 years now. Wow. The idea is that, this is one of the earliest studies in coaching. This is around the time that I got involved in coaching. It's by Anthony Grant out of Australia. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Lots of numbers. Is it working? There we go. There are all the numbers. So what does this mean, right? If you look at the top, do we have this? Do we have a little pointer? I'll go up there. I'll hop up. So if you look up here, full attainment scale here, right? The JAS. If you look at this, like pre-coaching, it's in the 60, right? And then you look at post-coaching, over 200. So that means post-coaching, you have a difference. You have the delta here. You have a 2.85. So think about it. So coaching, right? If you're working with a coach, that means your ability to attain goals is 2.85 times more than if you're not working with a coach. Right? Then you look at stress, depression, goal difficulty, all these things. Here's pre, and then you look at post. So what is this goal difficulty? That didn't change anything. Then you have depression scale, 4.6. That becomes a 1.2. Right? So now all of a sudden you're looking at this like a third, right? So why? How does this happen? Right? Let's go to the next slide. This is a very general idea of what happens with coaching. So you set a goal, then you develop an action plan. Most students might not get to the goal part. You know, the idea is I want to get a good grade, right? I want to get good grades. That's the thing. What happens then is the action plan. Oftentimes students, they're going to try really hard, I'm going to do what I can, but then they focus on the goal. They focus on what they think they can achieve. And when they focus on the goal, it creates a stress and pressure, right? Because there's an element of that they cannot control. And when you can't control something, then your anxiety goes up, your feeling. So what coaching does is it helps you focus on what you can do, the action step you can take, right? What you can do to act. What can you control? What are the things? Well, you can control the amount of study time. You can control the quality of your study. You can control the perspective that you take on your studies. You can control the structure that you use to study. So these are all the things that you can control. And what coaching does is it helps you monitor, evaluate, and change what's not working. Because you're working with somebody, you're talking with them once every 2 weeks. Once every 2 weeks or so. Let's go to the next slide. So craft to teacher's experience. So basically, when I was working as a coach, and I was doing this work, I was teaching Latin, and I had the same the principal, my principal at the school. He was also he was a former Latin teacher. We had the same alma mater, and I studied in Rhode Island, which is close to New York City, so it's on the East Coast. And then and then I moved to Southern Oregon, which is on the West Coast, on the other side, pretty close to California. And I had this laboratory at my fingertips. So for 4 years, I got involved in coaching, and I could try out all of these things, all these ideas that worked out with life coaching, and then I came up with the academic life coaching system. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. That's the book on the left. So that's the workbook. That's actually the college edition. But there's also a high school edition. And that's the academic life coaching workbook. And the one on the right is the training guide. So back in 2009, about 10 years ago, it's now in its 4th edition, that's when I started training people to be coaches. And next slide. The academic life coaching program, it's about 30 different concepts that split up over 10 different sessions. Yeah, next slide. Yes. There we go. So let's talk about the myths of working with a coach. So, when you talk about life coaching, it's not that, it's unusual. People don't know about it. It's not that compelling. But the 3 things that really, when I was talking to parents, the 3 things that I could solve, right? The three things were stress around grades, anxiety about the future, and frustration in relationships. Those are the three problems that I could, that I solved as a coach. And the four myths of working with a coach, the first one is that working with a coach means that something is wrong with me. Right? If I'm asking for help, that means something is wrong. But it's not that way. It's like an athlete. An athlete working with a sports psychologist, the athlete doesn't think, oh, something's wrong. It's that I want to get ahead. I want to perform better. And looking at ROI studies from the corporate world, which is a lot of where coaching came from, there's about a 20% difference in performance if you're working with a coach. It's not a massive difference, but think about 20%. And if you could add 20% to your grade, what would happen? If you could add 20% to your performance, what would happen? That's what we're looking at here, is that 20%. Over time, it compounds. Because now, that 20%, you're in a different place, right? 6 months later. Then you're in a different place a year later. You start doing that for a decade, and I've been coached now for, I don't know how long now, since 2005. So I'm the product of being coached for 14 years. That's a lot of coaching. I've also coached over 3,200 hours of coaching. So 3,200 hours, and I've trained over 1,500 people. Personally, so now my training company, we have 10 trainers, but I've listened to, obviously, maybe 2,000 hours of other people coaching. And I've led maybe 20 hours of training a week. I did that for 3 years. So there's a lot of coaching. The four myths, the first one is something is wrong with me if I'm working with a coach. The second one is that it's going to be more work. So as a coach, I have extra exercises. That's not true. It's the exercises are that I do with students. It helps them in whatever life they have, in whatever work they have. So let's say they have to do a chemistry project. I will help them approach that project from a very specific perspective. The third one is that other people will know that I am being coached and they'll make fun of me. So that's an interesting one. At the school I was working at, working with a coach became something positive. That the students were proud to be working with a coach, which I was really extremely proud of. And then the fourth one is that somehow I'm some parental spy. Like I'm going to get information from the student and pass it on to the parents. That was the fourth myth. What really happens is I feel like I come in and I'm this ambassador of peace. So the parents understand what they need to accomplish, the student understands what they need to accomplish, and then it all works together, and then it's all this happy family, and I think I'm a magician, because all of a sudden the grades go up, the room becomes clean, they're happy, and then everyone's all super happy to tell their friends, and I had a really thriving client base at one point in time. At one point in time I was working with over 40 students a week, but now I don't coach anymore. I don't coach anymore. Run an organization. Super busy. So this is the four myths. Core motivation, academic thinking styles. We're going to get to that. This is one that I'm really excited to share with you. It's going to be in the second slide deck. It's an old one, so you can see the branding has evolved over the past couple of years. The Wheel of Life, we're going to do that here. Well-designed actions. These are all basic, core bread and butter life coach exercises. Let's go to the next slide. This is part 2, motivation styles, assumptions, perspectives. Just to give you an idea of what's inside the book, right? What are we looking at here? And next slide. Yes, this is a couple of things that we've done. Since 2009, we've trained over 1,500 people. I've got some really good press. And most of my work right now is with colleges and universities. I say about half the work I do right now is with colleges. It turns out that if students are working with a coach, retention goes up. And if you're looking at retention from a university standpoint, this is this is where universities make their money. My biggest project, next slide. The biggest project so far, year to date, has been, next slide, has been with the, next slide, sorry, get ahead of myself. Keep going. One more, forward. It's with the University of Oklahoma. Yeah, let's do one more. It's alright. I'll just go off slide deck, go Hollywood style. There it is. There's the 3 challenges. Next slide. There we go. Next slide. There it is. So the University of Oklahoma. So I did this project in 2016. We trained about 30 people across 6 different departments. They had a challenge of their retention, freshman retention. was 86%, which isn't a bad average, but it's also something that, from an institutional standpoint, it needs to be above 90% in order for them to be financially sustainable. We trained their people after 2 years. Let's go to the next slide. That rate went to 92. The exact number was 92.1%. It was 186 students stayed in school above average. 186 students stayed in school. You think about the difference that will make in their lives. It's real, it's tangible, and we get to have a little bit, we're going to experience a little bit of it right now. So I'm looking around and I'm realizing that we don't have many pieces of paper. Oh, we have paper. Oh, they're ready. Oh, it's a t-shirt, amazing. So let's do a life coach exercise. You ready to do an exercise? Ready to get up and mix it up a little bit? Now I realize you probably came with someone. Many of you probably came with someone. Let's go next slide. Next slide again. There we go. So we'll stop here. So you probably came with someone. This time, wow. I'm going to ask you to stand in a minute. Ask you to stand in a minute and find someone you don't know. Find somebody you don't know. All right, and then we're going to do this exercise. In a minute here, in a minute. And the idea is this. So here's a wheel. It's a metaphor for your life. And if you have a pen, do you have pens? I realized I should have done this before. I had to plan this one out a little bit.
We have them, or shall I get some from down? I'll get some from down.
You gotta think about how to get that Tulsi plant in customs. Yeah, you know where to stop. Or your fingers.
Sangeeta, get from the classrooms.
Yes, one more here.
So I had these beautiful apples, right, from Oregon where I'm from. And I had to be here from China. We had these big signs that said, you can't take any fruit in China. So I'm sitting there chowing on all my apples. In the airport. In the airport. Airport's scary. I can just imagine what they're going to do with it. I love plants though. I really do. Someone knows me really well that ever gave me that. I really appreciate it. Plants good. All right, so the idea is this. You want to look at these wedges in a wheel and rate your current level of satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10. So how are you doing right now, right here? How satisfied are you with this area of your life? School, if you are an adult, becomes career, and grades become finances. All right, so this is designed for students. The idea is in personal growth is how satisfied are you with your personal growth or spirituality? Room becomes organization. How satisfied are you with your organization? Think about your computer, right? Or email, or your work schedule, calendar. Fun. How satisfied are you with the amount of fun that you have? And go ahead and put a number in there on a scale of 1 to 10. Right? So make the wheel. Make a wheel. And by the way, this is the very first life coaching. If you ever take a life coach training program or ever work with a coach, this is the very first exercise you do. So it's a rite of passage. And it is my honor to be the one to facilitate this for you today. Family, you can split up into significant other or extended family if you want. Or you keep it. You guys can do it too. You did it last night. Do it again. It's a different day. It's a different day, a different day. Scale of 1 to 10. How satisfied are you with this area of your life? Do it too. Come on. You're participating. It's not just parents. Yeah, give a piece of paper. You're in this too. Yeah, give a piece of paper. Yeah, how about it? Get on it. The youngest person I've ever trained was 17. The oldest person I've ever trained is 82. Mary Lou O'Halloran from Chicago. Sweetheart. One of my favorite people in the world. Mary Lou. Alright, 1 to 10. I'm up there. And then I'm going to give you a set of very specific questions to ask. Very specific questions. So a lot of what makes coaching work is non-judgment. You want to get to a place where you're not judging yourself or your client, but you're really using curiosity. Curiosity is a beautiful Latin word. It comes from the Latin word cura, which means to care. Much like I care after little plants. You're curious about it. You want to make sure that it's doing well. As a coach, you step into curiosity, and you step into this space of not judging. So what tends to happen is we look at our wheels, and then we might gravitate towards the lowest number and think, oh, what can I do to fix that? Anyone have that experience? You're thinking, oh no, I've got to go to the gym. Got to go get my workout on. Oh no, I got to go clean up my email. Yeah. I do one of these about once every quarter. So once every 3 months, I'll throw a wheel on and get it done. And I date them too, so you can see them year after year. It's fun. All right, so the first question is, what jumps out at you? What jumps out? You want to write this down, because we're going to get up and ask someone this in a second here. What jumps out at you? Let's go to the next slide too, while we're doing this. That's alright. Makes me feel at home. I used to teach 7th to 12th grade Latin, so there are all sorts of cell phones going off and everything makes me feel at home. After you teach 7th grade, nothing frightens you anymore. Are there any teachers in the crowd? Anyone? Alright, question categories, learn to do. So, most of the time, people ask questions, it's in the doing category. What do you need to do to make this better? What coaches, once you learn and get a little bit more into it, you realize the more valuable questions, the more quality question is, what are you learning about yourself? So, that's another question that I write down. Looking at this wheel, what are you learning about yourself? If you want to put it future tense, what do you hope to learn about yourself? What do you hope to learn about yourself in the next 2 weeks? You can see where these questions take you, right? They take you to territory that you might not have explored before. Being questions are, what characteristic is your life asking you? What characteristic is your life asking you to develop? What characteristics in others do you most admire? Alright, so here's the game, here's the rules. Here are the rules. We're going to get up in a minute. And you're going to make eye contact, you're going to meet someone you don't know. Introduce yourselves. Hi, we're going to do this exercise. And for 2 minutes, one person is the coach, one person is the client. And the client is the talk. And the coach, you are only allowed to ask questions that start with the word what. Right? You might want to use some of the questions that I just offered.
You can repeat the questions once again.
Okay, yes. So the questions are, what jumps out at you? If life were a teacher, what would it be trying to teach you right now? What's the relationship between this area and that area? That's a good question too. I like that one. What impact does this area have on another area? Variation of that. I'd avoid asking any doing questions. Like, what do you need to do? Just avoid those for now. You You can throw life out of it. All right, and then after 2 minutes, I will ask you to switch. And then the coach becomes the client becomes the coach, and then we'll sit back down and talk. All right? So everyone up, here we go, stand up. I know it's a big ask because of the audience. Stand up. You're here for a reason. Get the most out of it. All right. Find somebody to work with. Find someone to work with. Find someone new. Yeah, student, you got involved in this too. Come on. There's a little guy, there's a guy back there. Students go work with students. Have fun.
You can change. I mean, not necessarily that you can do it with your wife or husband.
Don't do it with your wife or husband. Change. Meet someone new.
Meet someone who is new to you, maybe.
That's right. That's right. We're all one big community. The human community. Meet someone new.
You can take a chair from there. So you can move from there. You can come here, maybe you can.
The next step is we're all going to do jumping jacks. Let's know what's happening next. Jumping jacks and touch our toes and play basketball.
So, exercise એવી છે, exercise એવી છે કે we are just wanting to you do it. તમે લોકો experience કરો કે coach કયા questions પૂછે. So for 2 minutes, 2 मिनट के लिए आप कोच बन जाएंगे किसी के लिए जिनको आप नहीं पहचानते हो, और 2 मिनट के बाद आप फ्रेंड बन जाएंगे. ओके, सो ये क्वेश्चंस जो जॉन ने दिए थे वो कुछ इस मॉडल पे आधारित है. ओके, तो कुछ क्वेश्चंस ऐसे हैं कि ये जो व्हील आपने किया उसमें से क्या आपको इम्प्रेस कर रहा है, क्या आपको ऐसे हो रहा है कि नहीं इसके बारे में मुझे काम करना पड़ेगा. ओके, तो ऐसे दिस इज द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन. उसके बाद आप पूछिए इसमें से आप अपने बारे में क्या सीख रहे हो, क्यों जो आपको करना है वो क्या कुछ आपको स्टॉप कर रहा है, या फिर इसमें से आपको क्या अपने बारे में से क्या करना पड़ेगा जिससे आप जो सपोज रैंक आपने 7 दिया है और आपको चाहिए है 10, तो आप 10 पे पहुंचने के लिए क्या आपको चेंज करना पड़ेगा. ओके, सो ऐसे क्वेश्चंस आपको पूछने हैं. क्या कर ज्यादा आप ऐसे पूछिए कि आपको अपने बारे में कुछ जानने को मिले.
All right, start now. Go. Feel someone. Switch if you haven't switched already.
Okay? Good?
You have become many coaches now.
You can pick up your certificate on the way out. So how was it? Let's have maybe 3 people. You can stay where you are too, because I have another exercise after this stuff to do. Let's hear from 3 people. What was it like to be listened to? What was it like to talk? We'll start there.
Maybe we haven't thought of on this line. Might be this kind of issues or this kind of situations in life, but nobody has even thought of in this line or even put in any efforts to identify those issues or problems which might be faced by, right? Maybe by me or something. Somebody has asked the question, so I have thought on that line and try to find out that what issue or what's like what is actually hindering me or what is stopping me by coming out of those problems or issues.
That's it?
So, I think we're learning out of this exercise. Not the concluding, but I can say that this is something I have tried to identify. Yes, this is something.
That was only 3.5 minutes. Imagine 30 minutes. Imagine a whole half hour of exploring and seeing what was going on. Now you see why, right? That chart, the 2.8% or 2.8 difference that makes. Like, this is why. Because you don't often get a chance to listen. You don't often get a chance to explore these areas and have somebody listening to you who's now going to ask you questions to figure out what's the next step, what's the next thing after this. Absolutely. Thank you. There we go.
Many of the times actually I have all the thoughts about where I am lacking or something, but maybe not getting a channelized way to where all the problems need to be taken forward or to talk somebody or anything about how we can proceed to get out of all these situations.
Right. A lot of it is how to get out of our own way, right? So many times if we put our, we create the obstacles that we really have to, we create our own obstacles. Absolutely. One more, yes.
After listening to someone, it's difficult to give any concrete suggestions or ideas like how to resolve them. Like once we listen to someone, we always start this thinking process started how to resolve that thing and how to guide someone in a proper way, because that questions are also somewhat related to us also. So somewhat we become biased in giving the solutions. So I think a life coach or someone who is independent can give a better idea and perspective to solve that questions or the thinking process which we are going on. Thanks.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. So, that's right on. Yeah, so this idea of solution, right? This idea of how to, when you're listening to somebody, you come up with, you think to yourself, this is a solution. Right? This is what I need to do. This is like, have you thought of this? What about that? What about this? And that's the natural, it's a human being trying to help another human being. Right? It's a beautiful thing. As a coach, you want to just take a step back from that and become simply curious. And the perspective that I like a lot of times, the metaphor I often use, is imagine you're going into an art museum. Imagine that the other person's life is an art museum. And all the challenges, the successes, the setbacks, all of that are paintings. When you go to an art museum, you don't go there and say, oh, this needs to change. Or can you believe that the modern art museum, some things look really bizarre. But you don't go there and think, oh, this needs to change. You go there and you appreciate it. You just look at it, you admire it. It's the same thing as a coach. You don't judge it, you don't give solutions right away, but you admire. What happens out of that is a solution, when you were talking, you felt that the solution to what is happening is within you. And it comes out. And it's a beautiful place to be. It really is. And as a coach, after a coaching session, I have more energy. Because I'm not trying to solve it. I'm not exhausted. And it's thrilling in a lot of ways. And this is why. I think this is why sometimes when you're listening as a friend and you're trying to give advice, it feels exhausting. But when you're listening as a coach, it can feel exciting. Yeah.
What happens, John, is in India, our first immediate impulsion is to go out to help people. So what we normally do is to give a lot of advice. ऐसे करो, ऐसे नहीं करो, ये करो. I think we are giving too many advice. Whether you like it or not, we impose a lot of our thinking and decisions on others. That's a problem. So there is a difference between being an advisor than a mentor. I think if we become a mentor, probably we will help people reach on their own to the solution. So see, it is an environment that we have to create, that a person finds their own solution and you become an instrument rather than you become kind of a leader. We have the leadership normally. The idea is that, okay, I've done something greater. So here I've done something probably satisfying me. That's what probably I understand. Now I have a question.
Okay. I love a good Q&A.
Yeah, I have a question, and that's this. Many a times, John, what we have found is that people refuse to be helped. And we feel that, there is a problem. I see the guy or a person is suffering, and a little help will, would solve a lot of problems. But somehow, we are not able to bring that change. There is that internal kind of a block, which, and sometimes we feel sad that, हम चाहते हैं फिर भी मदद नहीं करते, कुछ नहीं कर सकते. Normally it happens between husband and wife. Why do you think? है कि नहीं? Yes. Because it's my own experience I'm sharing with you.
Is she here?
She's not here, that's why I could speak. You see, so anyway, of course, every husband wants to help wife, and wife wants to help husband, and we always think that. But it's a good intention. But is our intention correct in its place? That is what I think we have to understand. If the other person doesn't want help, can we impose help? That also I think we have to look at. But still, the problem remains: how can we really bring that change? When we see a person is really suffering, and we are seeing it, and a person is not able to take it, and then that's why they go into the depression, and sometimes suicide, and all those things happen. So, would you be able to throw some light?
Yeah, thank you. It makes sense. I think a lot of times people don't ask for help because when they asked for help in the past, everyone is giving advice. And they also think, going back to growth mindset, if I need help, that means that my worth is less. And so that's the root of it. And so if let's say a student goes to a teacher and the student says, I don't understand this. Right? I'm not doing well. And the teacher gives lots of advice. The teacher has a certain perspective. The teacher makes them feel like they're not doing well, and this isn't, they feel judged. So they learn, I don't want to ask for help. I want to try to figure this out on my own. And that's the problem. But when you have a school like this, like when you have the ability to create a culture, a coaching culture based on curiosity. As a parent, the same thing. There's a family culture. Correct. When you have a culture of curiosity, you don't run into that same challenge. And so the ability, or not ability, but the situation where somebody doesn't want help and they're resistant to help is an indication that you haven't created a coaching culture. You've created a culture of judgment, and it's a fixed mindset culture. So it's a litmus test. I've done work with thousands of people. I've worked with many schools. Anywhere throughout the United States, throughout the world. And students in that culture inevitably they are closed. They don't have walls. They don't want to talk. They don't really want to do this. But once you break through a wall, once you get over that, they trust you. They just pour it out. It's like, they just go, and you have to almost say, no, we gotta stop. Like, it's time. Like, we gotta keep going on this presentation. So to me, it's the culture that creates this feeling of openness, where people ask for help. Asking for help is a positive thing. Let's go to the next slide. Can we do the next slide deck? There's one more thing I want to give you that I think will be really useful. Keep going. All right, we stop here a second. So, looking at schools, so this is a study that we did in 2010, 2011, where we looked at this is for the United States, but we looked at what students have to do, right, in school. And it looks, applying concepts, about 46% of the work, factual memorization, about a third, and creative thinking, a little less than a fifth. I think this is generous for what students have to do in school, right? But this is high school. This is looking at 11th and 12th grade. But memorization is a pretty big part of it. Usually, let's go to the next slide. As students get a little bit older, the amount of applying concepts and creative thinking increases. When they get into college, it increases. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Let's keep going. Okay, so here are the three main factors of learning. The first step is you need a context in which to place new information. So you need a starting point. So it needs to make sense. We like what we understand. Right? So if you're starting out and there's something there to start with, this is good. The second is midterm memory. You need to have a sense of what you're memorizing, and so that you can apply, you can build off of it. And then the third factor is the quality of the teacher-student relationship. If you trust your teacher, if you like your teacher, you're going to learn way better than if you don't trust your teacher and you don't like your teacher. So the three things, what you're coming in with, the knowledge you're coming in with, your ability to memorize and to hold information in midterm memory, and then the quality of the teacher relationship. You look at these three things and you focus on these three things. There are other factors, but these are the things that can really make a big difference, right? So if you're coming into a class and really truly you realize, wow, there's a lot I don't know, there's a lot of background information I don't know, then you get a tutor, right? You have to. But the quality of the teacher-student relationship is, I think, it's so vital, it's so important. And we know that, but there's a lot that you think you can and can't do. Sometimes you just get stuck with the teacher and think, okay, that's just the way it's going to be. But here's what you can do to help. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, next slide. Okay, the academic thinking styles. So here's the deal. Our brains account for about, a tenth of our body weight is in the cranium here. But our brains consume about 25 to 33% of the glucose in our blood. So that means that the brain is, as an organ, is energy intensive. It is the thing that makes us, it's hungry, it's energy hungry. So the brain looks for shortcuts. It looks for ways not to have to spend so much energy. In school, what this looks like is we tend to gravitate towards one of three ways of understanding the world. And we tend to gravitate towards one of these three ways. The first is, what are details? We ask ourselves, what's the names, dates, definitions, details? These are things, you know those lists in history class where you have the dates and you go through them, you just memorize them, you feel really good about that? Do we have any what people in the crowd? Like, does anyone really like categories and lists of things, like inventories? These kind of things, these are what people. What people tend to memorize, the birth dates of their friends, people like that, right? Or the kinds of ice cream that you might like, or desserts. what people are lovely friends. I am not a love person. But I have a couple of friends like this, and it's quite nice. Why people? Why people like to know what's the reason behind this? Why does this work? You know, if you're looking at math, you're asking yourself, okay, so why? Why this? And then how people want to know the steps. They just want to get in there, just solve it right away. How many white people? White people, yeah. How many how people? Are they how people? I'm a how person, yeah. How people tend to go fast, right? What people tend to go mid, and so how people tend to be the fastest in terms of trying to solve something. It shows up a lot in writing. So if you want to know what kind of person you are, look back at some of the papers that you wrote, or look back at the papers. It shows up. A lot of times, what people will get comments like, you need more analysis. And so you have a mismatch. And when that happens, then the teacher feels that the student's not doing well, and the student feels like they're not doing well, and it's a big problem. But as a parent, you have your own thinking style as well. And your child might have a different thinking style. Or your husband or wife has a different thinking style than you. And most of the time, husbands and wives have different thinking styles. It's very rare for a husband and wife to have the same thinking style. Right? You know that, right? The way they think is different.
Always different.
All right, yeah. So now you know, right?
Always different.
Always different. So you know this is happening. This is why our brains are made this way. It's this conserve energy. But once you know it, my definition of studying is to look at a concept and to ask yourself, okay, so what? What are the definitions? What are the names of everything? Then the why. Why does this work? What's the analysis? And then the how. What are the steps? So let's apply it to math, right? Let's go to the next slide. Oh, history first. Let's skip this one. We'll go through it quick. So this is how it worked with history. So, horseman, this is the what. So 1832, Prussian system. There basically was this idea of whichever nation had universal education, this was the nation that was going to lead for the next couple centuries. So horseman founded in Massachusetts and Boston. Let's go to the next. The next slide. There we go. Next slide. Why? Why is this important? Because he had a belief in the value of education for all citizens. Yeah, this is why everyone, right? There's a moral underpinning here. There was a strong influence of the Prussian system, and they believed that the nation with the best educated population would dominate the next century. All right, so this is the why. This why, do you feel how the why goes a level deeper than the what? But both are equally important. The challenge is some students gravitate towards one or the other. They'll think, oh, I don't need to know the names, dates, and definitions. Is anyone that date 1832? Right, that sticks in there. A lot of times people think that that's important, sometimes not. Next slide. So how did he do it? Well, he visited Prussia in the 1840s. He looked at garnering grassroots support for the education system in Massachusetts, and then other states followed Massachusetts' example. This is the how. These are the steps, the actual steps, the story. So that's how you would do it with history. Let's go with math. So here we go, the linear slope equation. So 2x plus 3 equals y. Brings you back, right? All the parents going, oh, I never thought I'd have to look at another linear equation again in my life. So the question here is, so let's look at the what. Next slide. So this is the what. What are these variables actually called? It's amazing how many students want to jump to the how, or want to jump to the why. Why does this work? But when you really know what each of these things are, it helps. So you have the slope, the x variable, the y-intercept, and the y variable. That's the linear equation. Next slide. Why? The key question to ask is, why does this work mathematically? Why does that work mathematically? And then the how. The slope is the rise over run. The y-intercept when x equals 0, what does y equal? So many students will jump directly to the how because they're taught to jump to the how to try to solve it quickly. But they don't slow down and get the thing, they don't get the definition. They don't go for the deeper purpose behind it. And especially if your brain is already, if your mind is already, if you're comfortable going with one of those three, what, why, or how, then it becomes even, you could easily jump to this. Right? This is a concept that I hope, as a parent, you can go back and talk to your child and figure out, wow, this is my style, this is your style. There's now a new understanding. It's not personal anymore. Right? It's an idea. And my definition of studying is to know what, is really to ask yourself what, then why, then how. If you do that with every single concept, that's a way to structure your ideas around study. And students, I've worked with countless number of students and have seen tremendous gains using this simple system of trying to organize thoughts and ideas. So with this, I'm going to stop. Here we are at the end. We have one more.
The data slide.
Which one?
The data, yeah.
You want to go back to that one? Do you want?
Here you had that, right? 93%.
Oh yeah, let's do the next slide. Yeah. Oh, the number of people who are in which ones?
No, you have a slide in which I just, when you were going through, I saw that you have a data on students who have taken academic life coaching.
Oh, okay. Oh, the impact, the study that we did? Oh yeah, let's go back then. Let's go back. The one that we rushed through, so I can deliver value.
Okay.
So now I get to brag about what we do. Yeah, go back. There we go. So this is the study that we did with students I was working with. The end count was about 20 students. And the biggest thing I'm happy about and most excited about was there was 100% acceptance into one of their top 3 schools. And I asked myself, why? Why is this? What happens? The system in the United States, one of the biggest parts of the application process is writing an essay. And what schools are looking for, what the top tier schools are looking for in the US, and I think the world, is a student who is passionate about something, who does something outside the bounds of school, who does something that they're really interested in and excels in that. So often, people in the school system, they want to do school really well and get really great grades, which is a great thing. But it's doing something that you're passionate about outside of school. This is what the schools are looking for. And this is what launched my career as an academic life coach, was that I would help students with the college application process to find what they were truly passionate about and start to take little tiny steps to achieve it. And once they did that, then they were successful. They wrote about their college essays and had a really great acceptance rate. Things that you also see, they feel more confident, less stressed, and then improved communication with parents, which lines up with the other study that you saw in life coaching. And I think in that little 4-minute experience, you can see why. But if you're working with a coach over a period of time, you can see why this would happen. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, You guys are great. Thanks for coming out on Sunday. Hopefully it was worth it. And I'll be around for other questions.
But the basic question, like, and I know once you go to course, but in our environment, basically like what we are in here in the state, how to talk to a child to showing how the goals are, like what life, what comes afterwards, but how to start the talk, how to initiate the thing. It's easy to teach someone, but first how to start, like I want to say my child that you should go in this discipline. But once I say he had that capture that my dad wants me to do in this discipline. I don't want to do that thing. But how to initiate, how to evolve that talk, how to start that first step, like baby step is that, how to initiate that talk, that what is psychology is quite prevalent, so we can't force anything. What I say becomes the stress drive. So I don't want that mark to be faced on him. So first step, I would say that how to initiate the talk, because that's the important thing. Then comes the next steps, like, and to bring to you also, I need to first brainwash is that this is the important thing. So how to start, that's the basic thing.
Yeah. She'll cover. So thanks a lot for the question. What we do is, we do have Dr. Krishna with us. Dr. Krishna Banani. John, if you're okay,
I'll go. Yeah.
Yeah, this is working. First and foremost, you don't need to brainwash your children. Okay? And you would like that your child should do something what you tell? Or would you like something that you would like to ask your child? Ask would be. मैं यही कहना चाहती हूँ कि पेरेंट्स नॉर्मली क्या कहते हैं, नहीं, मम्मी डैडी हमेशा अच्छा सोचते हैं कि अपने बच्चे के लिए अच्छी करियर होनी चाहिए, पर जो आपकी परिभाषा होती है अच्छी करियर की और जो बच्चों की है वो उसमें बहुत डिफरेंस होता है. So sometimes I really feel that be a friend to your child, talk to your child, expose the child to various things, especially because आप लोग के children will be coming in the 8th, 9th, and that's a time which is very, very important. अभी तक क्या हुआ है कि parents have always thought कि you know the basic lines which are there, which we have, but अब career options बहुत change हो गए हैं. So try to find out what your child likes. एक parent के हिसाब से मैं अगर बोलूँ तो, frankly, because being a counselor as a psychologist, parents कम के हम अच्छा ही हमारे बच्चे के लिए सोचते हैं. I say 100% आप अच्छा ही सोचते हैं, पर क्या वो बच्चे के लिए अच्छा है, बच्चे की दृष्टि से? Is it right from the child's perspective? And that is important. So talk to the child. Understand what the child wants. Parents come and say, my child is brilliant. He is wonderful. उसको तो इंजीनियर ही बनना चाहिए, डॉक्टर ही बनना चाहिए. अरे सब इंजीनियर और डॉक्टर बनेंगे तो क्या होगा? Once a parent came to me crying कि मेरे बेटे को मैं कितना भी पढ़ाती हूँ, इंटेलिजेंट है, पर वो किचन में ही जाता है. He loves to cook. I said, what is wrong? A chef earns much better than a doctor or an engineer. तो क्या बुराई क्या है? Let me tell you, my hairdresser is a man. And every woman, I'm sure, if I talk of Satish, of laughing, Ahmedabad women would love to go to Satish only for a haircut. Who is he? He's a hairdresser. He's the best. तो क्या wrong है? So, हम अच्छा सोचते, करो, बातें करो अपने बच्चों के साथ. But be a friend when you are planning career with the child. बच्चों को अच्छा लगना चाहिए. That is important.
How to break the ice.
How to break the ice? I'll tell you one thing. Till 12 years, children are children. 12 plus, we all know they are going through biological changes. Body के changes होते हैं, puberty आती है, hormones बदलते हैं, right? Start becoming a friend. Start becoming a friend.
Absolutely.
Right? And let me tell you, mother के लिए, बेटी के लिए mummy is the best friend, और बेटे के लिए father is the best friend. They should be open to come and talk to you and ask you everything. Whether it's biological, sexual, anything. I tell you, अगर आप friends होंगे ना और उनके साथ बात करेंगे, your children will never go on the wrong path. They will never ever go on the wrong path. And listen to them. एक और बात कह सकती हूँ आपको कि parents want to tell. आप कभी कभी वो टेल को छोड़ के आस्क कर दो. I'm telling you, आपकी बात मानेंगे, आपकी ही बात मानेंगे. Like I'll just give one little example कि बच्चे लोग, you know, when they come into teenagers, उनको friends के साथ बाहर जाना बहुत अच्छा लगता है. and maybe the first day, first show is there. The daughter decides that I'm going for a movie, my best actor. और उस दिन घर पे आती हो कहते मम्मी today I'm going for a 4 o'clock show. And mummy says नहीं जा सकते, चलो cooking कर दो मेरे लिए. मम्मी की reason genuine थी. She was not well and there were guests coming and she could not manage cooking. पर उसने क्या कहा? उसने सिर्फ ना कहा. The same thing if she would have said, you want to go today for a movie? You see, today I'm really not feeling well and people are coming to cook. Today help me in cooking. Go tomorrow for a movie. I'll tell you, कोई बेटी मम्मी को ना नहीं कहेगी कि I will not help you. But just telling no. And this is the age of rebelliousness. You know, you want to, push yourself. Handle them. They are wonderful. You handle your children and the children will not know कि आप उनको handle कर रहे हो. That is it.
I have to say, the Indian tea is amazing. Whatever spices you put in there are really good. It's so good. I think I've had more tough cups of tea than ever. It's good stuff. So, two thoughts, real quick.
Any more questions for him before we move on to?
Yeah.
I think you would like to
I do, yeah, two quick things. First thing is, well, I agree with a lot of that. It's a challenge to be the coach for your child. And one of the benefits of coaching is to help your child establish a relationship with someone not you. Whether that's a family friend or someone like this, your child will speak differently to a family friend than your father. So find a coach, find someone, right, to talk to your child. I have an 11-year-old, I am not going to coach her. I'm going to try. I always joke that I have trained her coach. I'm not going to actually be her coach. And I work with a lot of parents and teenagers and people. Underneath your desire for your son to do this, you have desire for your child to thrive, for him to be successful. Underneath what he wants to do, he also has a desire to thrive and be successful. So if you can't take a step back and both realign yourself around that fundamental desire to thrive and be successful, that's the path forward. Having an idea of he needs to do this or that, I think you're going to run into a problem. And I don't think there's any way around it. I think it's just going to lead to contention. Those are my two thoughts. It's often really hard. I don't even try to coach my child. And but he will feel your care. He will feel your concern. And that's the most important thing.
Before you give the questions to them, I will just give a short brief introduction about who Dr. Krishnamma is. She's a renowned psychologist and head of Department of Psychology at St. Xavier's College, Ahmedabad. She has close to 3 decades of experience in teaching and also treating patients through private practice. Dr. Krishnamma is widely covered in print and social media for her perspective on students and their struggles. Now the floor is all open. I would request you to please raise your hand. We'll hand over the mic to you and you can ask your questions.
Well, I think yeah, I'll take the mic. Oh, it's working. There we go. All right, so the question is, how can you help students get the habit of learning what lies? Right?
Yes.
The first step is helping them become aware that there even is a what lie out. I mean, that's the first step. I don't think the fundamental perspective, at least in the United States, I don't know enough about here, and I do know that it's different in other parts of the world, is that somehow the teacher wins if there's learning happening, and then the student somehow, if they can get away with learning as little as possible, still get a good grade, then the students are happy, right? They're like, yay, I somehow defeated the system, right?
So that's the fundamental challenge that you're up against, because that's what the system has been. That's what the system is designed. If the teacher says you need to read 10 pages and write a 10-page paper, I mean, there's not much as a student you can do, so it feels onerous. So the first step is getting beyond that perspective, and as a parent, getting to the perspective that learning is fun. We want to learn. But when you add a condition, when you start making learning into conditional motivation, and you attach rewards or punishments to learning, then learning becomes a work. It becomes something that you don't want to do. And you start looking at it from a conditional standpoint, and then the whole thing short circuits. So the biggest thing is getting back into that perspective of it's intrinsically motivating to learn things. Like today, right? It was intrinsically fun to learn things. Right? Intrinsically fun to do this. So I think getting into that intrinsically fun place as a parent, you can model this. So at nighttime and dinner, you're looking, oh, I have to help you do your homework. It's not that. It's like, oh, great. I get to go and I get to learn this too. I get to learn this with you. Look how much fun this is. Look at what you can do with this. So I think, students do a very good job of pretending that they don't. Students do a very good job of pretending that they don't want to be you or follow your example, but they want you. So yeah, it's a lot of it is your example matters a lot. And I think just simply letting them know about the what, why, how. Students, once they learn this, they often go around and they try to figure out what kind of teacher, they'll go in and say, Mr. Smith, he's a Y teacher. Mr. Black, he's a how, he's a what teacher. So yeah, it's really fun that way. Thanks for your question.
I have a question that when we were in the schools, at that time there was only communication media was like TV only.
Yeah.
Now in this era, mobile and TV, two things are now.
Yeah, the net.
Now the thing is that how to control our child, because what is happening, we allow them to see the TV, okay fine, but still at the end of the day they try to extend those hours, and we implement or we try to control them. And now the media of this mobile has come. Now they are also trying to grasp this technology very fast.
Yeah.
Said what should the control things we should take care of these two parameters.
How old is your child?
6 years.
Okay. एक काम करो मैं आप मत उसे कंट्रोल करो आप अपना टीवी व्यूइंग अपना मोबाइल यूजिंग सब कंट्रोल कर दो I tell you it will make a lot of difference because your child is watching that.
We have given them full freedom. We are not.
No, giving freedom is one thing. This is what I want to tell you. So what happens is we all are very busy and we feel very happy कि हमारे बच्चे technology savvy बहुत हो गए हैं. It's good, but what are children doing? ये टाइम है घर के सब बैठ जाते हैं टीवी देखने को चलो सीरियल आई. Now a child of 2, 3, 4 years यही देखते हैं. पापा मम्मी मोबाइल पे क्योंकि बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कॉल्स है, फेसबुक है एक्सेट्रा. राइट एंड बच्चे अगर मांगते हैं तो पेरेंट्स से लो बिकॉज ऑल द टाइम चिल्ड्रन वांटिंग योर अटेंशन बिकम्स टू मच. એટલે હા ભાઈ બચ્ચા ને 1-1.5 घंटा गेम खेलेगा तो हमको शांति रहेगी. We have pushed them. Children can't buy things or do, and they have seen us do the same thing. I would say you stop watching your TV programs regularly. उसके लिए अपने लिए self control चाहिए. You stop using mobile indiscriminately. I'm not saying use mobile, but discriminately, not all the time. Because बच्चे जो देखते हैं वही अपने behavior में डालते हैं. Let me tell you, we are role models. You parents are your role models for your children. वही करते हैं. क्या हो जाता है कि we don't realize children are observing us all this time. But जब वो 10, 12 years के 13 years को हो जाते हैं, that's the time when the pressure starts building up. And then we want them to change. No, it's difficult. So let us change. आज से आप decide कर लो ना कि मुझे नहीं देखना है टीवी. क्या होगा? The world will not come to an end.
Actually, TV we don't see, but they don't allow us to see. That's only thing. By the time I come at 6:37, I don't get my remote control to see that. No serial like this. They watch all the programs till 9:30, 10:30.
पर आप ही बंद कर दो ना, आप क्यों मांगते हो? मैं वही तो कह रही हूँ कि you say we don't have to see the TV. I don't want to see. Forget it. I'll tell you one thing. Even I was a parent, and my children have gone through the process. Of course, my lifestyle is such that I'm not much of a TV watcher. I don't have the time. But I had made it a thing that when my son went into 9th, till he finished his 12th, and my daughter was in the 10th, finished the 10th, हमारे घर में सिर्फ टीवी का डबला था. वो मैं तो बेच देना चाहती थी, क्योंकि मैंने वो चैनल ही कटवा दी थी. And I tell you, what happened in that whole scenario was, my children started reading newspaper because that was a kind of entertainment for them. And maybe तब वो world news नहीं पढ़ते थे, cricket अच्छी लगती थी तो पढ़ते थे. But what is wrong? Started reading newspaper, enjoying books. Are we ready to stop? That is important. फिर अगर हम एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि बच्चे करेंगे.
One more. Can you throw light on growth mindset?
Yeah, growth mindset. And yeah, we don't have a TV in our house. Like there's no TV. Yeah, who has time for TV? The growth mindset. Carol Dweck. So her last name is DWECK. So yeah, I look it up and Google it. She wrote a book, Growth Mindset, in the 80s or 90s. I don't know the exact date. But the idea is that you want to focus on effort over talent. So as long as your child is putting in effort, you don't say good job. Like if you get it right, it's are you putting in the effort to do it? And if they're putting the effort, it's like good effort. You know, and it's so we have an 11. So we have an 1192. And I was a teacher, and we homeschool, but we do online school. And my 11-year-old, she reads. I mean, it's almost a problem how much she reads, to the point where she'll go through a book, and she really only wants to read. She doesn't like to do math. But my 9-year-old is the opposite. She likes to do math, but she doesn't like to read. So the idea is that you look at what they like to do, and as long as they're putting in effort, using their brain, and working towards mastery, then that's good. So it's a shift as a parent. It's not. I don't care what So she's in 5th grade. And she went off to school, and I told her, my biggest hope for you is that you will fail. You will fail a test, a class, whatever. Who cares? Like, that's my biggest hope, and I mean it. And as a parent, if they can get over that idea of failure and accept it and embrace it, and if there are, it's not that you fail because you're watching too much TV or you're not putting in effort, but you're really trying. You're putting in that effort. If you can have them not take failure as an emotionally challenging thing to the worth of their being, that's at the crux of growth mindset.
There's one thing which I think I'd like to say from my side, as a academician, as well as a parent, and also as a counselor. We always feel that we can give a lot of motivating talk to our children. And of course, parents should be the best motivators, I believe. पर क्या हो जाता है कि हम इतने उत्साह में आ जाते हैं कि हम अपने बच्चे को फिर कंपेयर करना शुरू कर देते हैं. For God's sake, even with your own children, like if one is good in one and the other is good in another, देखो ये तुम्हारा भैया कितना अच्छा काम कर रहा है या बहना क्या अच्छा कर रही है, तुम भी ऐसा करो. For God's sake, don't ever compare any two children. even amongst yourself, family, friends, because what we are doing is we are doing gross injustice to our children. We are not motivating them. आगे चल के बच्चों के माइंड में वो बहुत रह जाता है क्या I mean, मेरे पेरेंट्स ने कभी हमको हमारे एफर्ट्स को कभी रिस्पेक्ट नहीं किया है. So there are ways in which you can talk to them, but please comparison तो कभी भी मत करना दो बच्चों के बीच में.
I mentioned this yesterday as well. It's pretty surreal that if you spend the entire education, you don't get to appreciate one of your teachers who has a tremendous influence on you, on your way of thinking, and on your way of influencing other people, right? So I've had great professors all across, great teachers, great professors. Their conversations have directed me in the direction that I'm on. Never ever had a chance to invite them, host them, get them to interact with an audience, probably give gifts to them, and things like that. So I thank you, each one of you, and of course I thank John for making it all the way, coming down here, the jet lag and everything, and to make this possible. Now, coming into Flow Global, what we work on, one is academic life coaching, which is the core focus. So it's both mind training and body. So those are the two focus areas. In terms of body awareness, like basic cortisol testing, we have a doctor here. So the vagus nerve, which is connected to the medulla oblongata and the heart, is both efferent and afferent, right? So it sends information, receives information. We have learned from John that 80 to 90% of information is from the heart of the brain. So that management of that is the core, right? And so hence the mind training. So in that, in addition to academic life coaching, which is super powerful because it is just 10 sessions, and we'll run through a video for you. You'll be able to see the transformation, from a student's point of view. And the second thing that we do is Now You Know Better, which is a curated experience. That is to answer the big question of students where they want to know, what do I choose to do in my life? So we create these very focused curated experience where, like for example, one girl wanted to do veterinary science, right? When we asked her, why do you want to do it? I love animals, right? So we actually took her to a petting zoo, put her inside a pen, right? There was a 14-year-old deer. She could hold it. But there is poop. There is dirt. There is the other side. And one, maybe a time to eat in Dubai. But she could actually process. We spent about 2 hours there. She could process herself. It's not about imposing our idea on her. Don't do this. But get to know that it's dirty and it's good. There is risk and there is reward, and you make a choice. Then the next thing that we do, and this relates to one of the questions as well. You were talking about the social component and all of that. That is, do great is another element. Do great is an element where there's nothing more rewarding than doing something for others, right? Which adds a lot of value to your own character. Now, that is the do great component where we engage with students where they can, through us, get into socially oriented, their own leadership projects. They care about the world, whether it's planting, whether it's animals, whether it's whatever they want to do. We help them with their leadership project. So on the body training, there's heart rate variance, which is the measure for getting to know your health. It's basically building that awareness that if you train the mind and physically you're not fit, and you wait for something to hit you by the time you're 25 or 30, and then you go to the doctor, instead of that, if you're aware early on how to avoid injury, how to take care of yourself, how to do the right diet, the nutrition, the game, the whole thing, then they will have overall development. So that's the idea. So I'll run through the video now. We can close out post that. Yeah. Thank you so much. So thanks for being here. You've been an amazing audience and very interactive audience. If you have any questions, I can take probably 1 or 2 questions. and then we can move on with the day. Yeah? So do you have any questions on anything on academic life coaching? I hope it was informative enough. Yeah?
Thank you.
Alright, thank you very much.
Yes,
You wanted to say something? Oh yeah, sorry.
Actually, it was a suggestion for if we can arrange such a wonderful session for the class 6 onwards children in school. Because they would also understand how important it is and
Bang on topic. Yeah. Very good suggestion. That's a good suggestion. John is addressing in the leadership speaker session grade 6 onwards, right?
6 to 10 tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow he's doing it.
okay.
Yeah, so that's happening. Your wish is becoming reality. Good quickly, that too. Thanks to John. So thank you so much. If any other questions, please get in touch with us and we'll.
They are Ahmedabad. Satish and Ankita, they are based in Ahmedabad. If you want to contact them anytime, you can always contact, and the contact details maybe we can send it to the parents if they require. Alright. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah. God bless.